everybody, it's Drybear. Lost Ark just received a brand new raid update, and it's something that I used to do when Lost Ark first came out in the West about 2 years ago, was going over the class popularity in the game as something that I, as a past developer, am super interested in. And while I have recently come back to Lost Ark with the new raids and everything, I did do another round of testing out where the class popularity is in the game right now, and I think this is also a very interesting conversation as we are experiencing, again, a support shortage with the new raid, and I want to compare it to not only with North America, Western communities, as well as Korea, where the game originally launched. Now, luckily, there is a public API in Korea, which allows us to pull the data for all of the players and characters that are created and logged into in the version of Korea. So on the right side of the screen, I have Korea, and I've filtered this by 1700 eye level or higher. My goal is to try and capture most, if not all, end game characters, like more cutting edge, doing the most recent content, and progress the furthest. Now, obviously, there's a lot of asterisks that go along with class popularity in Lost Ark because it is a game that heavily encourages you having multiple characters, if not a full roster, like dozens of characters on your list that you can play, which means that tracking down someone's main is very amorphous and very difficult to do. And so this is just going to be capturing how many of the characters are actually being honed up to the highest level of gear or the most recent level of gear in each region. So for Korea, I pulled this morning from Loa, which is a Korean website which uses the public API. So this is going to be more accurate stats for Korea. On the left side of the screen, there's a bunch of different ways that I used to go about trying to calculate the actual popularity of classes in the game, and most of those ways are pretty much dead because people have had characters for so long, it's very hard to track. On the character creator, you can actually go into the game and see what choices people make on which class they choose when they make their character. What I used to do 2 years ago was what I would go to the auction house and see which books or which character specific or class specific items were being traded and bought on the auction house, and those were just kind of somewhat arbitrary, but trying like to estimate what is available for the game itself. So what I did this time, since people have had their characters for so long, the auction house method is not going to work. The in-game character creation isn't going to work because obviously people have already made their characters and we don't really care about the very early characters. Is I actually just sat down, went to the Aegir, the brand new raid release, and counted unique players for just about 2,000 players total. So you go into the game and go into the lobbies, and I looked through some of these, but I just wanted to do the brand new raid, so we can look through some of these here for lower alts, and I think the numbers are going to look different based on which one you click on and which one you look at, but I just wanted to see who is queuing up at prime time on North America East for my server, so it's going to be more of an estimate of what it is, and I think that anything over 1,000 is a relevant sample size. It's not going to be perfectly accurate. Obviously, these numbers will change for region, and we do know that in Europe, in South America, in different regions, these numbers are going to look slightly different, but hopefully at least is a representative number set to just go through and see who's queuing for Aegir with their main characters, with the characters that they feel are honed up enough to do the most recent content in both regions. So this is what we've got, and I'll put this image online. I'll put it down in the description and down in the comments as well, but you can see that on NA East for 1660 plus, which means that you can do at least normal Aegir. These are the numbers that I got out of the 2,000 people or so that I sampled from the matches, and these are all unique players as well compared to Korea. So there's a couple things to take away from this. The first thing is that there's a lot of discussion right now around whether there is a support shortage, and I think that it's a very easy estimate to look at because realistically every 4 players in the game for relevant content needs to have 1 support and 3 DPS, which means that you'd probably want to average around 25% of the total player base that are queuing for endgame content to be support players to make that line up. In neither of the regions does that ever actually reach the 25% mark. So of the available in Korea, 18.85% is support. This would be artist, bard, or paladin. So a much higher percentage than we see at least on NA East. And in NA East, it's 14.08%, which is lower than 25%. And this is why you end up getting with these major lobby lists where you have like 10 to 15 different groups that are, 6 out of 8, 7 out of 8, 3 out of 4 that are just saying looking for support because there just aren't enough people playing support, or there aren't enough support classes. And I think that they probably just need to release 1 or 2 more support classes to help dilute that a little bit so they can create more opportunities, not only so that there are more interesting support options for people that don't like it, but also so they don't have to make duplicates. There are some people that are support mains that literally have like 5 paladins and 6 bards on their roster because there just aren't that many choices. And I know it's a delicate balancing act for them, but obviously the support shortage is very real in both regions. Here you can see 14% to 18% between the two regions for support is not anywhere near what you would want it to be, with around 20 to 25% being a little bit better. Now, what's interesting about this is, at least in NA East, so in Western Lost Ark, but in this region specifically, Breaker and Soul Eater are absolutely dominating, which is crazy because both those classes are relatively new. Breaker being the most recent class to release in Lost Ark, Soul Eater just before that. So these are new classes, but they have been an absolute massive hit in both regions. More so in NA East, Breakers, you will see a Breaker, at least, 1 to 3 breakers in almost every single game lobby in NA East, and I'm guessing it's the same for NA West, and probably pretty close to that in Europe and South America as well. In general, there's some pretty major differences in Europe. I remember last time I did this years ago, there was, North America preferred War Dancer, Europe preferred Striker, things like that. There were some differences between those. But Breaker becoming incredibly popular in North America at least, and still very popular in Korea as well. And Soul Eater also very strong. And I think you could probably, the likelihood that you would look at a 8-man group, 8 to 16 if you're looking at Behemoth, the likelihood of you seeing at least one Breaker and at least one Soul Eater is extremely high. They are very, very popular classes. And actually, I was shocked to see Gunslinger high as well. I figured it being one of the older classes and also one of the more challenging classes, I didn't expect it to see it as high as we do in NA East. You can see that Gunslinger has actually fallen a little bit in Korea since the last time I looked at this. Slayer, also one of the more recent classes, becoming incredibly popular. And what's interesting about this is actually since the release of Slayer, Berserker in Korea has fallen dramatically. Historically in Korea, the popularity at the bottom was always Sharpshooter, Soulfist, Deadeye. Those were always at the bottom of the list. Sharpshooter has come up a little bit, Soulfist has stayed at the bottom, and Deadeye has stayed at the bottom. But if we compare that to North America, we know that Deadeye has come up quite a bit, and Soulfist is actually pretty popular. There's a lot of people playing the EO after the buffs and reworks about a year ago, I believe, for Soulfist. Even though it's incredibly difficult to do correctly, it's still decently popular. And some of these actually shocked me. I thought I was going to see more destroyers in the game lobbies for North America East, but I actually didn't. In fact, what I noticed is on my alts, when I'm doing lower level raids, I do see a decent amount of destroyers. But when you're talking about the highest eye level raids, you don't see destroyers all that often. In fact, Machinist, Summoner, and Destroyer are the least popular in North America East, whereas you see them a little bit more often in Korea comparatively as well. Overall, 27.96% in NA East are the martial artists, which is kind of shocking too, because I think that, obviously there's more of them. You have Breaker, War Dancer, Glaiver, Striker, Scrapper, and Soulfist all fitting into that. It's one of the biggest categories in the game, but also just because of Breaker and War Dancer being so high, seeing that as well. And actually, since Breaker came out, we saw Scrapper fall down quite a bit as well in both regions, although there still is more popularity for Scrapper. I thought Scrapper was going to be towards the bottom, but she's actually not in either group, which is kind of surprising. Another interesting takeaway is that Reaper is actually more unpopular in NA East than I thought. Again, I thought I would see more Reapers, but I guess when you really do the numbers and you count unique players doing regular content during prime time, there actually is a lot less Reapers than I thought there would be. And you compare the Reaper here at 1.96% in NA East to 4.62% in Korea. Far more favored in Korea than in the East. Although, look at this, is kind of interesting too. Deathblade 4.89% in NA East, Deathblade 4.85% in Korea. So almost identical, very, very close together in the amount of people that are playing Deathblade total. I think there's definitely some of that. She's one of the oldest classes, so people have been able to build those, but that's also kind of an interesting takeaway. Also, what's kind of shocking too as well is if you look at the top percentage here in Korea, Artist and Bard are very high. In fact, they are the most populated classes. It's fair to say in Korea that almost every single account has a relevant content clearing artist or bard on their roster. They are literally that popular in there. Whereas you look in NA East, bard is actually the most popular in NA East. I think in Europe, paladin would be far more popular, but in NA East specifically, paladin is going to be lower here. And then you have artist and bard a little bit higher, but nowhere near as high as they are in Korea in general. And actually, you see a lot less adoption for specialist in NA East compared to Korea as well, as artist and aeromancer are the top two in Korea. Artist is down like to number 7 in NA East, and aeromancer is just under the 50% mark in NA East as well. Some of that's just the aesthetics or the gameplay style, or just the adoption rate of the class coming out. Some people believe that both specs for aeromancer are just too simple, or maybe they just don't like the fact that it is a younger looking character. There's definitely some implications with that for people, how they choose, and the fact that they can't, you know, customize their character beyond just their face and their hair and that sort of thing. But that is the class popularity after about counting about at prime time NA East, about 2,000 unique players doing Aegir at 1660 plus, and comparing that to the database, the API pull for Korea at 1700 plus for more of their more recent content, and comparing the two together using damage support, all the different specs. But also let me know if you have any gleanings from this, anything you can see based on the numbers, something that might come out from this for you, and what you might think from that down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.